Steve Basic Architect here, and yeah, the last couple videos we did some introduction on the project. You got to see the floor plan. We're going to dive into the foundation plan here, and then move on to some details and go through some of the other plans and talk about how we put this together before we put it together. Anyways, hopefully you're enjoying this series. Drop a comment or two and let me know what you think of this series of going back and the retro on projects. I think it's really important. It actually helps my mind actually revisiting some of these thoughts, some of these details. So hopefully you are getting something out of it too. They're really interesting projects. So onward and upward. For those of you just joining us, we're calling this the PH11 series, right? Passive House 11, and the reason is that it got certified in 2011. So I actually designed this house in 09, and we constructed it in 10, and then we certified it in 11. So yeah, this house has been on the ground for, I don't know, 13 plus years, 14 plus years, so closing in on 14 years. So without further ado, let's get after it. We're gonna, like I said, start from the bottom up. We're gonna move right into the foundation plan. So you can see that, I mean, it is a pretty simple house, not very large at all. You can certainly see the outline here, right, of the foundation. It's just basically a 4-foot stem wall, and that stem wall, it basically goes underground. We backfilled it, we put the slab on top of it, and then we framed a floor system on top to get our, I don't know, we're probably well over or close to R100 on the floor. I'd have to calculate it, but I don't know, it's 16, 40, 64, 10. Yeah, it's maybe close to R80, R90, something like that. Then we basically filled that cavity with insulation, but we had to develop the design, and basically it's a double wall structure. It's a double wall structure on its back. And to do that, we basically have our foundation plan. We poured our slab, and then we have some bearing lines here, right? And those are just simple footings that we cast into the top of the slab because they're just carrying the floor. The roof load goes from wall here to wall there. So there's nothing being posed on the inside of the slab except that, 40 pounds live load, and I think we set it for 20 pounds dead load, which are your standard loading conditions up here. And we do have one condition here where we have a point load, and that's for a column because we have a little roof structure that picks up the floor there, and then that roof structure continues over here on the porch. So we have that sliver there that we have to create a beam line for. So we have our little 3.5-inch lolly column sitting on a 30-inch square concrete footing, 10 inches deep, 5 number 4 bars each way. Those are pretty, standard boilerplate stuff for us. And like I said, the foundation wall is basically a exterior footing, 20 inches wide, 10 inches high, and then a 10-inch wide concrete foundation wall here. It's probably on the order of about 4 or 5 feet tall, and it has a little shelf in it like that. So that way there we can bring our insulation across, and the slab will sit out here, right, and sit on there, and then we do our superstructure above that. But I mean, the foundation plan, not a whole lot of magic, and understand that the foundation plan, or the foundation, we pushed outside of the building envelope, right? So even though it's part of the building and it's under the roof, thermally and air tightness wise, it's pushed outside of the building. So it's almost, this may be a little bit of a stretch, but if you're familiar with commercial construction, with podium construction, where, you know, they'll build these buildings with a very thick slab, they'll put a whole bunch of retail under here, and then they'll build 5 stories of multifamily on top of it. Well, it has that really strong base, and then you're building a wood structure above, and this is concrete. So this is just a real simplified residential version of the same there. So let's take a look at the actual floor framing plan above, and we'll get this all to start making sense. But you can see there's our foundation here that I just traced on the last plan, and we have our beam line here, and we have our beam line here, and we have our beam line here. Let's continue that and turn the corner there. And the joist, it's very simple. They just span in that direction. 4 bays. They are not very large bays. You can see 9 foot, 8 foot. This one's probably about 7.5 foot, and the largest one is this one, somewhere at around 9 foot. Or here we go, 9'2", 8 foot, 8 foot, 9 foot 2. So those are there. The floor joists are 2x8s, 16 inches on center. And what we did was, on top of the rigid insulation that sits on top of the slab, and I'm going to blow up this detail here in a second, we have a 2x10 plate that just sits down. So think of the 2x10 as it's kind of another simplified spread footing, if you will. We have that, and then it's basically just a simple 2x8 floor that we're framing. But the real detail is here. So I'm going to blow this up so we see about half of it. We don't need to see the whole thing. I love this vibe board. It's a game changer. And I teamed up with them, so if you want a vibe board for your office, which you know, after having one, I would, even if I just had an office, I would probably put one in there. But you know, you can message me or send me your email, and I can send you a link, get you a little bit of a discount on these. So anyways, here is that foundation wall that we talked about. Trim that line down a little for you guys. I didn't realize when I scale it up, I'm still learning here, when I scale it up, the line scales up. So there is that foundation wall. There is the shelf. And notice there is no insulation shelf there. That's right. And the reason there's no insulation is because the insulation is on top side, right? And we're going to use green, you know, as part of the control layers. So here you can see we have our rigid insulation here, and we have 2 layers. But notice it's only 1 layer here. It's only 1 layer. Trying to bring back the, there we go. It's only 1 layer. Oh my God. All right, and then done, and it'll bring it back. There we go. All right. So it's only that 1 layer there, and it's only 1 layer. It narrows here. So, you know, here we have 1 layer, and then here we have 2 layers. And the reason we do that is basically because we have that 2x10 sitting on top of it, and you can see it there too, nice and clear. You have that 2x10 sitting on top, rather than have 2 layers and have more crushability. I don't know if that's a word, but you guys understand what I'm saying. Having the 1 layer, I get the thermal break, but I minimize the crushing of that. The 2x10 spreads that load out nice and wide. And on the ends, you'll see here where we just simply have a 2x4 wall, and then that frames conventionally as our 2x8. On the other side we have that, but in the middle these were just struts, right? So the 2x8 actually spans from there to there, and then they went in and they just put 2x4s on the side and just nailed those struts to the side at whatever height, you know, pulling a string across there, getting it nice and level. Now, one of the things I wanted to call your attention to is we have the foundation wall there. The exterior wall gets framed on top of the foundation wall. The interior wall gets framed on top of the floor frame there. So that's carrying the first floor and the first floor wall there. But what that does now is that allows for the sprinkling of insulation in here and the fill of insulation in this space, as well as the joist base space, right? So we get to fill that all up with insulation, but the beauty is our floor sheathing comes across the top here, and it connects to a little 2x4 ledger here, right? And that 2x4, and we're gonna blow up this detail and look at it specifically in a future video. So I want you to get the basic understanding of what it is that we're doing in the building in general, and then we'll move in closer and closer. So the beauty of that is the only thermal break I really have in the building is that 3/4 inch face of the Advantech floor sheathing that goes across there. And so I get all of that insulation space here, and it basically turns the corner, and then as part of my double wall assembly, I can maintain that continuity because the insulation now is going up. It's going to fill that cavity of the stud, it's going to fill that cavity, it's going to fill the space in between, and it's going to fill that cavity. But the reality is that from a thermal perspective, I maintain continuity across that system, right? And that's how it turns it into a passive house, minimizing thermal bridging, enhanced insulation package, and then of course an air tightness package that exceeds or is better than 0.60 at 50 pascals. So air changes per hour. Let's take a quick look at down here. Here you can see the actual beef this line up a little. You can see here is our 2x4 pony wall there, right, with our studs, and obviously they all stack right on top. Here's our 2x8 floor joists, 16 inches on center. This is our XPS. Now, keep in mind, before you come back and start saying, oh, you shouldn't use XPS, the blowing agent, it's not environmentally friendly. This was designed, you know, almost 14 years ago. And so, you know, some insulations like GPS and stuff, they weren't really out. So our choices are slightly different. And that's one of the beauties of kind of going back into a retro design like this and going back in time and having a little talk about it, because you get to understand that a lot of the decisions that we made before have evolved or have been innovated by the industry or by the architect or by the specific designer builder to now enhance what it is that we have today that is available. So yeah, we probably wouldn't do XPS. I would either do a Type 9 EPS, or I would just do a graphite infused GPS. Sorry. But getting back to the floor, you can see here, so this is probably on the order, I if I remember correctly, somewhere around 16 inches of space there. And that is a full bearing. And then here's those struts that I was telling you about, right? So those struts, after they put the floor joist in, they just put those up against it and then they nail that in, right? And shoot those in, and you have a nice floor. Now, the other thing here is, here's that 2x4 ledger that's running around the house. And notice that that floor frame is here. So we are thermally broken. On that joint there. So in this one here, I just threw this one up so you can see, with every decision, there are consequences. Sometimes the consequences are favorable, sometimes they're moderate, sometimes they're unfavorable. One of the consequences of this, and I'd probably put it in a slightly moderate category, is the fact that when you do that frame floor, we can limit the height of the foundation to 10 inches. But then if we add 16 inches here, now our total to grade is 26 inches, right? And that is basically a short step of 5 inches and then 3 at 7 inches. So it's basically 4 steps that now we have to solve for, as opposed to a step, right? If I just built this on grade, I could put a piece of stone out here and I could step from the floor down. But now I'm stepping from up here and coming down to the ground there. So we had to solve for that. But you can see here the door, and that is not a window. Likewise, this is the door here, and we have a considerable distance to make up at the ground. So that was one of the consequences of moving in this direction. But the beauty is out here we did a beautiful patio with a integral firebox for roasting logs and marshmallows for their kids and such. And then over on the side here we just have a nice little 4x4 stoop with a few stairs down that you'll see. But anyways, that's our foundation plan look. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Stay tuned. We got a lot more coming up. I think the next video is that we're going to look at that foundation detail in detail. So, anyways, you know the deal. I'm Steve Basic Architect. This is my vibe board. You can find me on the Build Show Network as a contributor, as well as one of the co-hosts of the Unbuild It podcast. And if you're still looking for more, do not be afraid. You find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, and of course, you found me here on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, and if you have, tell all your friends and tell them to smash that subscribe button. So until next time, long live our buildings.